This video is going to cover filtering in Tableau, including string filters, date filters, how to filter measures, how to do window filters, and then we'll touch on the pages feature as well. First, let's cover string filters. In Sheet 1, I'm going to build a simple view using product name and sales with profit on color. And I'll hover over the axis and do a sort descend. If you watched my previous video on sets and groups, some of the functionality that we see with sets is going to apply to filters as well. So let's dig into that. Product name, I can drag that to filters. And just like creating a set, we've got these options at the top. I could filter based on a list of products. I could do some string related searching using wildcards, either contains, starts with, and ends with, or exactly matches. So one example might be maybe I want to grab all the products I sell from a particular vendor. I could type that vendor into the contains option, hit OK, and here I have all the products I sell from Eldon. Let's explore some other options. I'm going to edit the filter. I'll clear out Eldon, and I'll instead go over to condition. Under condition, I can select a measure, maybe profit, and I just want to look at all profits that are less than or equal to 0. I could also do a formula, and a formula might allow me to bring in more than just one measure. For example, maybe I want to look at products where we have more than $5,000 in sales and the profit is still less than 0. A simple Boolean statement, I can narrow down my list of products to just those that fall in the category. This fourth option, the top option, is similar, but it lets me select either the top or bottom with the same parameters. I could do a top 10 by a measure, bottom 10 by a measure, or top or bottom 10 by a formula. It doesn't have to be 10. We could select that option. We could enter a new value, 50, 100, whatever it might be, or we can create a new parameter. Let's try that option. In the parameter menu, I can give it a name, top N, and Tableau invites me to either use a list or range, or even just allow all. I could just have my end user input any number they want. I'll stick with a range for now, though. Let's do a min of 1 and a max of 100 and hit OK. And for now, we'll do the top N in sales. I can right-click on that parameter and show it. And that populates this card that allows me to either move the slider or type in the number that I want to look at. So if I shift it closer to the left, it'll grow smaller. Closer to the right, it grows larger. There's a couple other features I want to show around string filtering. So for now, I'm going to drop the product name filter by dragging it off. And I'm going to take two dimensions to filters. One will be category. I'll select all and hit OK, and then subcategory, where I hit all and OK. Clicking on both of those fields in the filter shelf, I can select show filter. I'll do that. And one thing I want to show is some of the options around formatting filters. Clicking into category, I can modify this to be a single value list or dropdown, or even a multiple value list or dropdown. One thing I really like doing is customizing the filter to show an apply button. So if I click on multiple value drop down, customize, show apply button, this lets the end user click around in the filter before Tableau tries to compute anything. Now underneath that, subcategory, obviously that's going to nest up to category. To clean things up for the end user, there's an option that's really helpful. In the menu, you can select only relevant values. So you can see that right now we're only looking at furniture and office supplies, not technology. But we still have technology subcategories showing up in this list. When I select only relevant values, those subcategories go away. In addition, in this menu, you can choose whether you're excluding the values, including the values, or excluding them. So if I swap that, instead, we'll be taking those two categories out and we'll only be looking at technology. I'm going to switch it back to include. And the last thing I want to show is on this side, you can choose to apply these filters to other worksheets. You can have them relate to only this worksheet, or all using this data source, or even all using related data sources if you have more than one data source. If we had more than one worksheet, there'd also be a fourth option that would allow me to select specific worksheets to apply these filters to. Let's move on to filtering by dates. I'm going to create a new sheet, and I'll create a quick chart showing sales over time. I have an order date in my data set, and if I take that to filters, we get three main ways that we can filter on dates. The first is a relative date option that lets me filter relative to a specific date. I could filter on a range of dates, giving a start and end, or I could extract date parts from the date and filter based on those on various levels, all the way from years down to even days, or if it were a timestamp, hours and seconds. Let's start by looking at relative date. If I click on that, it brings this menu up where I can select the date grain, year, quarter, month, week, day. Underneath my date grain are a bunch of options. I can look at the previous quarter, current quarter, the next quarter, or I could look at the last N or next N quarters. I could also look quarter to date. In the bottom left, I could also anchor that relative. By default, Tableau is going to look relative to today, but if I need to modify that to a day in the past or future, I could select the date here. Next to relative date, we have range of dates. Selecting that, it's going to look at the domain of my date range. It'll grab the min and max and present those on the ends. If I want to, I can click in and select a different date, or I can use my slider and just find a different date. In addition, if I want to leave it open-ended one way or the other, I could select a starting date to filter on or an ending date. This would say, this would be kind of like a min. Show me only dates that fall after this date, or on the other side, show me dates that are only less than this date. We have this special option as well. This just lets me filter out rows that don't have a date field, or maybe do have a date field. Null dates would show me those rows without a date field, and non-null dates would show me those rows with a date field. For now, I'm going to go back to range of dates and select OK. I'll go over to that filter and show the filter. The end user now has the ability to click into this filter and narrow the dates that they're looking at. Clicking into this menu will also give the end user the option to toggle how they filter dates. They could swap from range of dates to a relative date and have that menu show as well. I'll remove that filter and show another way to filter dates, and that would be using the date part. Selecting months, for example, that's going to bring up just calendar months, and I can select to look at July. This would be handy if I wanted to do some kind of year over year comparison. Changing my date field from continuous to discrete also helps with that analysis because it's going to cut out a lot of the axis. So now I can compare each of my Julys year over year. Okay, now we're going to talk about filtering measures. I'm going to create a new worksheet. I'll bring out subcategory and sales to create a simple bar chart. And I'm going to filter on profit. So if I right click and drag, I get this pop-up menu that lets me select from all values, or I get to aggregate profit in some way. All values is going to be a row level evaluation. Tableau is going to look at every row in my database. And if I want to filter to just positive profit, I can change my range of values to be at least 0. And Tableau will remove any rows with negative profit. On the other hand, I might choose to aggregate profit first. So let me drop profit on color just to illustrate this really quick. You can see that we have three subcategories with negative profit. If I drag profit up and select sum and do the same thing, put only positive profit, Tableau is going to remove those 3 bars from the view. When talking about order of operations in Tableau, the first thing to be filtered will be dimensions. The next thing will be measures. And then last will be any window functions that you have. One example of window function would be looking at dates. So I'm going to navigate back to our earlier worksheet. I'll pull this filter off. And you can see that I've got orders over time. I'll double click into my marks card and type. Actually, let's use the function last. In prior versions of Tableau, you would have been able to drag that function right into the filter shelf, but now Tableau wants you to materialize that calculation first. So just drag it to the data pane, rename it if you need to. And also, before you drag it to filters, you want to make any modifications to how it's computing if you need to. So make all the edits you need, and then lastly, you can drag it to filters. The nice thing about window calcs and using them as filters is they won't break any other window calcs that you have going on. To show that, I'll do a quick table calculation on sales. I'll do a running total. And you can see that in December of 2016, I have about $1.5 million in sales. If I remove that last filter, that number won't change. So you can see that all these past months were still being computed in that running total. Okay, the last thing we'll talk about today is pages. Now, I don't really use pages that much. Even in all my 10 years, I've maybe used it once or twice. But it does do one cool thing that I want to show. I'm going to create a scatter plot using profit sales and subcategory. Let's swap those axes. And then I'm going to take order date and put it on pages. That's going to populate this card on the right side of my screen. If I click on the arrow, it will shift through each of my years of data. If I want to, I can select show history, and I can even modify that. So I'll have history show for all marks. I'll have trails and marks, and then there'll be a little bit of a fade. Now, if I push play again, as we go from 2014 to the end of our data, you can kind of see the progression. Some subcategories stayed, under profit, and then we have some really rapid rises like we see in copiers here. Each year, we sold more and more. So it's a really cool way to show patterns in your data over time or in some other sequential order. That's our video today on filters and pages. Next video, we're going to start getting into calculations, and I'm really excited for that. So I hope you join me.